1665 and 1666, Newton had been intrigued by Descartes' mechanical philosophy. But he was suspicious of it. There was no role for God after the creation of the universe.
Whence is it that nature does nothing in vain? And whence arises all that order and beauty which we see in the world? Does it not appear from phenomena that there is a being, incorporeal, living, intelligent, omnipresent, who, in infinite space, as it were in his sensory, sees the things themselves intimately, and thoroughly perceives them and comprehends them wholly?
This virtual recluse drove himself to test Descartes' theory. Was the universe really a mass of lifeless matter, or a living world run by God? He became fascinated by the force that held the moon in orbit and caused apples to fall. Surely gravity was the divine force, not a matter of chance. Newton was obsessive. In 18 months he became the greatest mathematician in the world and invented calculus that enabled him to study the movements of planets in later years.
A feather or a black ribbon put between my eye and the setting sun makes great colours.
Descartes had said that light was created when a stream of particles hit the eye. Newton investigated whether light and colour was created in the eye or by the brain, risking his eyesight time and again.
I took a bodkin and put it between my eye and the bone, as near to the back side of my eye as I could. And pressing my eye with the end of it, so as to make the curvature in my eye, there appeared several white, dark, and coloured circles.
For centuries, philosophers from Aristotle to Descartes thought white light was pure and that colours were produced by modifying white light. Eventually, Newton turned this theory on its head. Using prisms, Newton proved white light is made up of primary colours, the colours of the rainbow. By the late 1660s, word of Newton's extraordinary scientific discoveries spread across Europe, but his religious inspiration was ignored.
Newton himself wanted to design a universe in which God was absolutely present and absolutely powerful. There's an enormous irony there. In the 18th century, gangs of interpreters, most of them French, will take the God out of Newton's world, and we will be left with a clockwork universe. I mean, it's a very common image of what the Newtonian world was, that it was soulless, that it was mechanical, that it was a piece of clockwork, that it really wasn't theologically motivated at all.
To this day, this purely mechanical picture of Newton's universe is still accepted worldwide. But in Jerusalem lies evidence of the scale of deception that has been perpetrated on generations. Dr. Stephen Snowbellen, an historian, has come to examine some of the 4,000 pages written by Newton that were sold at auction but not bought by the economist Maynard Keynes.
What these manuscripts reveal is a very different Newton than most people conceive of. A thinker who had a grand, unified project to uncover God's truth, God's true doctrines. This is a Newton who is not a cold, calculating scientist. This is revealing Newton in all his glory, warts and all, if you will. We see his theology, we see his science, we see his alchemy.
Alchemy was Newton's dark secret. For 25 years, from about 1668, Newton devoted himself to this illegal and clandestine practice. For centuries, alchemists had searched for the philosopher's stone, the mythical ingredient that transformed base metals into the purest gold. Many fraudsters claimed to possess it.
In some instances, it was immensely profitable. You could milk Duke or Prince of a substantial amount of money, no question. But if you got caught, it was extremely dangerous. We know that one of the customary punishments for defrocked alchemists, as it were, was to be hanged on a gilded scaffold. And sometimes they were forced to wear suits of tinsel as they were hanged to make it a public spectacle.
Newton secretly became one of Europe's leading alchemists.
These rules in general should be observed. First, that the fire be quick. Second, that the crucible be thoroughly heated before anything be put in. Third, the metals be put in successively, according to their degree of fusibility: iron, copper, antimony, tin, lead. Fourth, that they stand sometime after fusion before they be poured off according to the quantity of regulus they yield: iron, copper, tin, lead. Fifth, that no salt be thrown in, unless upon iron, to keep it from hardening. Sixth, that if you would have the saltpeter flow, without too great a heat, you may quicken it by throwing a little saltpeter mixed with 1/8 or 1/16 of charcoal, finely powdered.
Why Newton took up the fraudulent practice of alchemy has baffled people for 300 years. He worked in strict secrecy. Even an assistant working with him did not know what Newton was seeing in the crucible.
What his aim might be, I was not able to penetrate into. But his pains, his diligence, as those times made me think, he aimed at something far beyond the reach of human art and industry.
"250 years later, when the economist Maynard Keynes gazed on Newton's private manuscripts, he was appalled. He assumed the great scientist appeared to be a magician, dabbling with the occult. Today, researchers are still trying to penetrate Newton's alchemical mind. At Indiana University in the United States, Professor Bill Newman has spent years deciphering Newton's coded recipes. He has redone experiments that Newton did 300 years ago. The task has been immense. Newton, like other alchemists, believed alchemical recipes were buried within ancient texts, from the Bible to Greek myths.
In some instances, he interprets the myths in a very, very exact way so that they correspond to actual recipes that you can carry out in the laboratory.
Professor Newman recreates a recipe that was derived from a myth found in the writings of the Roman poet Ovid. According to Isaac Newton, this recipe, called the net, should create a purple alloy that was one step towards discovering the philosopher's stone.
Behold the net. It worked.